welcome to the Wealth Builders Masterclasses that we do once a month, and we might do more than once a month. Actually, we do have really, really good speakers after our conference, and we wanted to bring all that knowledge with you guys and then share with you guys, bring that knowledge to you guys. And today our masterclass is on mastering commercial underwriter. Analyze any commercial real estate deal in minutes without the spreadsheet headaches. So I just wanted to ask you guys, are you guys tired of wasting hours and hours in Excel trying to underwrite a deal? I know, which we all do. Sometimes I recall, spending kind of, multiple hours at night at the middle of the night, still trying to kind of double guessing myself, did I get the numbers right? So, but I think in this master class is basically hands-on class. You will learn how to use commercial underwriter. Commercial underwriter is one of the, I would say, revolutionary cloud-based tool that has been built by Bob Bowman to simplify and accelerate underwriting across multiple asset classes. So Bob will walk us through a step-by-step how to streamline your deal analysis, eliminate spreadsheet headaches, and also underwrite confidently, because you're not double guessing yourself, which I do all the time. So welcome, Bob. I'm super excited to have you with us today. I know at the conference you shared with us a little bit about the commercial underwriter. So today is going to be kind of full-blown version that we're going to be sharing with everyone. So super excited to have you.
Well, thank you, Vinki. And hello, everybody, and hello to all my friends out there. And I saw some of your hellos out there, Joseph, Hatomi, etc. So it's glad to be here. We got a lot to talk about, and we have about 35 minutes. So what I'm going to try to do is share with you some of the things that I come across when I'm underwriting, how I make investment decisions very quickly. I want to talk to you about a few of the most common mistakes. I do a presentation on the 7 most common mistakes in underwriting and how to fix them. And this doesn't matter if you're buying office buildings or retail or apartments or RV parks. The things that I share in that underwriting and how to fix it goes across to all property types. So thank you for your time. First of all, just a really quick background. I'm an investor like you. I buy properties, but I also invest in properties, and more recently, just my own in terms of being a passive investor. But I started in 2007 in apartments. That's where I cut my teeth. I was a copier salesperson, didn't know anything about underwriting, and I didn't know anything about commercial real estate. But fortunately, I have a wife that was a forensic accountant in real estate, in commercial real estate, and she knew quite a bit about commercial real estate. So I learned, and I went and got some training from people that were already successful in the commercial real estate space. Why try to figure out this yourself when you can pay somebody that's already successful, that has the blueprint and the cookie cutter, and all you have to do is follow what they do. So I followed a path. I started in 2007. I started buying apartments. The smallest one that I purchased in South Carolina was uh, 34 units, excuse me, and the largest one was about 400 units. And I can share with you, if you're in the apartment business or want to be in it, you start getting 250 units or more, you're no longer buying a property, you're buying a business, and you have to look at it differently. And when you go into the larger apartments, everything, even small decisions, are very large. So if you think about a garbage disposal for $100, let's say you have a systemic issue and you want to replace them all. Well, heck, if you have 400 units, 400 times 100 is a $40,000 decision, right? That's not a $4,000 decision. So, things exponentially become more complicated, and you have to be extremely well organized and have a management company or a team that has the experience to exercise your business plan. Just think about keeping track of all your refrigerators and all of your appliances and all your supplies, that in itself is a business where you have to have, certain skill level, but it could be very profitable. So when the apartment business started tightening up, meaning there were a lot more competitors, pricing was going up, margins were changing, I decided to buy office buildings, and we've been doing extremely well. We've been in the office building business for about over 8 years now. We're going on 9 years. We had property in Dallas, and we had several buildings that we still own in Charlotte. And even through COVID, they did extremely well. And I love office buildings. But one of the problems that I had is that there wasn't a tool out there, a good tool that I could use to calculate the values of retail, office, and commercial property based on $1 per square foot. And so what I did, a long story short, I developed my own. And I don't even know how to put together an Excel sheet, but I had a vision and I created a product that's still very unique on the market today. I've never seen anybody being able to. You have a software product that underwrites many different commercial properties. So if for those of you that are on the call, if you love retail strip centers, which there's some really good opportunities out there, we have a certain business model, successful business model for office buildings and medical office buildings. If you want to do RV resort parks, mobile homes, student housing, storage facilities, you can do all of that in the product that I developed because I have interest in those, and so I developed that out for myself. It was never meant to sell, but over time I realized I couldn't make it work and do what I needed to do on Excel. And if you have an Apple computer, it just simply doesn't work because I tried to develop this out in Excel, and that's when I found out that Microsoft doesn't give Apple all their attributes. So anyway, long story short, we developed it out on the cloud. Currently, I'm buying RV resort parks. I really like them. But so that's basically my background and how I evolved. And I look at a lot of deals. And one of the things that bothered me was the amount of time it takes to make an investment decision. So I'm actually going to show you how I make investment decisions very quickly and how I do this on the software. I'd also like to share with you, I can't go through all seven of the mistakes and how to fix it. It's about an hour and 20 minute or so presentation, but I can share some of it with you along the way. The other thing that we're doing is and how I'm underwriting, I'm thinking underwriting differently because I'm concerned about the tariffs and how that's going to impact our business and our NOI and our values long term. And as every day it's almost a moving target, isn't it? On what these tariffs might or might not mean to us. But in the meantime, we know for a fact that things are going to go up. So I want to share a little bit of what my thought processes are today and what I'm doing today. And, this could change tomorrow, but I'm going to share with you a little bit of insight as we go through, uh, uh, underwriting and some of the things that we do. So let me pull up, if
you.
I may,
So
unless there's
So
any
I
questions.
wanted to I wanted to interject for a second, and I just wanted to clarify. You should be able to share all the seven mistakes because we have 60 minutes plus. So we have until 11, but we can go beyond that too because people are hungry to learn from you. So today we do not have the time limitation like we had in our conference because we have multiple speakers. We are on a time crunch. So you have ample time today to guide us through or hold our hand and walk us through the whole process. But before we get started, I have a quick little disclaimer over here. I'm going to share my screen. So this is a small little disclaimer. This session is strictly for educational purposes and should not be considered as legal or accounting advice. So if you have any investment related questions or anything to do with accounting, please reach out to your CPAs or your attorneys. So other than that, some housekeeping items, please use the Q&A box throughout the presentation if you have any questions. And Bob will answer all the questions live. And if we missed any question by chance, please send an email to vinki@loombainvest.com and we'll reply. All right. So stage is all yours, Bob. And I think you do have the sharing session. Please, let me see here. So you can go ahead and share.
Okay. Well, Vinky, I can go through some of the things on the mistakes, but I have a whole slide presentation that I would need to pull up to go through all this, and I need to find it. And if that's something that we're going to do, I had not planned on that. I planned to talk about it, but I can't go into great detail. But I can talk about it. I'm going to do a presentation next week on the seven most common mistakes and go through great detail. So we can also do that if anybody wants to attend. I'm happy to invite them. Okay.
Sure.
But I will give you some ideas when I go through some of these things, and I will point out the seven common mistakes. Okay. But it's quite. I'm a detail person because when you're underwriting, and to effectively be a good underwriter, it's really important that you pay attention to the detail. So every single number that I get from the seller or the broker, I need to understand where did that number come from. And when I see that number, the question becomes whether that's a number for contracted services, it might be repair and maintenance, whatever it is. The question is, can I improve upon that number? Can I operate a little bit better? So, what is in that number, meaning what makes up that number? So, when you underwrite, and underwriting is the most important thing that you're going to do because until you learn how to be an effective underwriter and identify great opportunities, you'll never buy a property or be as effective and make the kind of money that you hope or wish you could make in commercial real estate. And so everything starts with underwriting because you can't make an offer until you've underwritten your deal and you valued it up for yourself. And then you have to determine what is your tolerance for risk? What is your tolerance for risk? I do not have much tolerance for risk. I'm super conservative. I don't do deals other people would do, but I do sleep well at night. We make money, and I help my investors make money, and I help other people make money. But everybody sees properties a little bit differently. But the most important thing that you have to pay attention to is your data. And that's your data in your underwriting. You want to make data-driven decisions and not emotional decisions. And so, part of the design in my software, and I'm going to pull it up in a minute, and we're going to start going through some underwriting things, is that in my process, I need to be efficient. And if you're working a full-time job trying to do this, or if you're spending an hour or more trying to write an apartment deal, you're spending too much time. You can, once there's two things, in any software product, you have to know how to use the software. Where do I put the numbers? But the biggest challenge in the long term, is becoming a good underwriter. And that takes underwriting a number of deals and learning about the numbers as you go along. So, you have to evolve and you have to look at a lot of deals and the more you look at, the better you're going to get. And that's my advice. Don't stop, don't quit. As a matter of fact, part of the design in the efficiency for my time, when I developed the software, I actually used my 8-year-old granddaughter, and I gave her a very difficult property. It was an office building, and it was 23 tenants, and she had to create the rent abstract. Now, the rent abstract is basically in commercial, when you're dealing in a dollar per square foot, it's actually, you input, the rent roll with the lease expiration dates, everything that's in that lease in terms of the dollar amount, when the lease expires, how much square footage they have. And my 8-year-old granddaughter, I would give her an office deal and she would input the data and create the revenue. And that's how it's done in all commercial on a dollar per square foot. Now, unit-based analysis, unit-based stuff is going to be, storage units, apartment units. And the way that we go about that when we input our data is a little bit different. One thing that it would take me a little bit of time to show you that I can certainly do at another time, but I do want to mention to you last year, we incorporated artificial intelligence into the software. So if you're looking at an apartment deal and you have a spreadsheet from the seller that's either a PDF or Excel spreadsheet, you can use AI that we created inside the software and incorporate that without having to type in the financials, the seller's financials. And it's really cool how it works. So, but that would be another lesson. I think I have like an 8 or 9 minute video on the process of that we created. But I just wanted to mention that on the unit side, unit-based analysis side, we are using artificial intelligence. It took a while to create. People think, oh, I have AI, and it'll take the numbers and just dump it in to my software. But that's the last thing that you want to do. So with that being said, let me pull up the commercial underwriter. Let me share my screen with you, if I may.
Mhm.
And I have a sample apartment here. Let's see. Okay. All right. And let me know if you can see my screen. Okay. Vinky, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So what you're looking at here is the software that we created. We're actually running on Microsoft Azure. It's on the cloud. It's a cloud-based product. And I pulled up a sample. This was actually a real apartment that we looked at a few years ago. And I just love the example. And and I developed this out because I don't have a lot of time to underwrite deals. So a couple quick things, and then we'll get into some of the educational portion of this because I need to explain this as we go, is that these yellow boxes are input. And I created that, I dummied it up for myself because I just want my eyes to go exactly where I want to or need to put a number in. Wherever I can save a keystroke, I do because I want the software to work for me. I don't want to work for the software. So anything I can do and not have to type and automate is being done in the background. So there's a lot of things that are happening here. The what you're looking at on the top here is a dashboard and it's static. And one of the things that's important for me when I'm underwriting a deal and I'm doing some kind of sensitivity analysis and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what price do I need to be at? Maybe I need to change the interest rate on the mortgage or the amount we need to put down. One of the things that always bothered me when the Excel spreadsheets is going through all the tabs and trying to update everything. And, one of the things that I saw on a regular basis, because people take really nice Excel spreadsheets and they start modifying them, and it's really easy for the formulas to get changed accidentally. And so I was in several situations before I created Commercial Underwriter where one person brought me a property for over $19 million, an apartment deal. And when I looked at and I manually calculated their returns and what they did, the property was really only worth $11 million. I mean, it was a over $8 million haircut that I told this person, if you want me to do your deal, it's 11 million. It's not 19.5. And I said, no wonder the seller took your offer. So, one of the things that's really important as an underwriter, if you're going to be working with investors, is going to be being able to make sure that you may not like the numbers, but the integrity. You have to have integrity. okay? And your product has to have integrity in everything that you do. So, it still goes back to simple, I call commercial underwriter up here, my tagline is simple input, but sophisticated output. So the blue colors are basic information, the pinkish colors that are all tied together, net present value, internal rates of return, my hold, all those are related, the pink colors, okay, the pricing. And then the green for me stands for money. And the thing that I look at is right here. This is what I'm interested in, is the cash. And you should be interested in the cash. Brokers, sometimes people will ask me, Bob, what cap rate do you buy at? And I said, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I really don't care. What I care about is how much cash is in this deal and how profitable are we going to be? Because when you buy a property, it's the cash flow that is going to keep you compliant with your loan documents and your debt service coverage ratios, if you know what that is. You have to have the lender wants you to have a certain amount of profit so that they can make sure that there's enough revenue in your investment to make sure that they get paid. See, the banks don't care about us. They only care about making sure that their investors are protected and they make their money. So, I'm always watching the cash flow. So right here on the top, I have it. It might be a little difficult for you to see on the Zoom, but it's my top number is my average annualized cash on cash return. And then the bottom number is my average rate of return. And all this is at property level. Okay. Because right now I'm valuing the property. Now, once I put my numbers in, I've already have my returns for my investors. Everything is automated, and I can show you that. But when I'm looking at a deal, and you notice because my dashboard is static, it's efficient because you notice as I change screens, my dashboard is still there. No matter what I do, it's always there. Because when I make a change, I want to know now how that change affected my deal. I don't want to be picking through tabs on a sheet. So this has been very valuable for me. So as I get started here, and I'll share with you one of the biggest mistake that I see being made in underwriting. And I'm going to come down here to my starting financials, and I'm going to come back here in a moment. But the biggest mistake that I see, the number one mistake, is underwriting property taxes. Okay, because what happens is that when you buy a property and you close, the day that you close, you pay your insurance in advance, okay, for typically a full year at closing, because the lender wants to make sure that when you sign that document and you have a fire tonight, that you have insurance. So insurance is paid forward, but the problem with property taxes is that property taxes are always paid in arrears. So if you buy a property tax today, and I often hear brokers tell other people that, hey, don't worry, you're not going to have to pay that tax. It's not going to be assessed until next year. Well, yes, that's true. It always gets assessed by the end of each calendar year, but they'll go back to the date that you purchased the property, and you will have to pay the additional amount between what the seller was paying and what what you're going to have to pay. Because remember, you're paying more for the property. And if you're paying more and it's worth more, the county's going to assess you a higher property tax. And so the biggest thing that I see is that, people use their first year property taxes the same number that the sellers is, even though they're paying more money. Now, with that being said, in a small handful of states, like for example in North Carolina, where we own property, and I've owned apartments there. That's where I have my office building. They don't assess taxes but once every 7 years, even though in their state constitution or their state laws that they can evaluate and assess your property every year. They really do it every 7 years. So how you underwrite that and what kind of risk that you're willing to pay. And depending how many years are left, you might have to assess and decide that maybe you don't enter a full property tax number, but maybe you underwrite some kind of an increase. So the best way, and I'm going to give you the fix to get started. When I'm first underwriting a deal, I don't know what the millage rate is for this property unless the broker put it in the property package. But what you want to do on your property taxes is take your purchase price. In this case, it's 7 million, and then take 80% of 7 million, which would be, let's just, be 5,600,000 times whatever the total millage rate is to get your tax number. Okay, so let me just say that one more time, and I'll give you another example. If you're buying a $10 million property, take 80% of whatever your purchase price is, which would make that 8 million, right? So take 8 million times your millage rate, and that'll give you a good starting number for your property taxes. Now, if I'm going to get into a best and final, and I have a chance of getting this deal, then I'm going to put extra effort into my property tax number by calling the assessor's office. And sometimes it takes 4 or 5 different people to get to the right person. That is the one that's going to assess my apartment or my office building or whatever it is you're buying. And I talk to that person and I approach them in such a way and let them know that I'm an investor interested in investing in their area, and I want to make sure that I have enough money in my tax escrow to make sure that I can pay the county. And when you phrase it that way to them, they really appreciate it. So, so the bottom line, and I'll discuss more of this a little bit more detail in the presentation uh, of the 7 most common mistakes. But just to get yourself started, and if you don't know what the millage rate is, just find out what county your property's in or ask the broker and then use that millage rate, and that'll give you a good starting number for your property taxes. But if you don't get this right, it could have a significant impact because this could be a really big number. So that's something that you want to figure out. So, so when I'm underwriting uh, a property of any kind, what your biggest challenge, your biggest amount of money you're going to need is going to be your debt, right? And that means your mortgage and who's going to finance your property. So, just to keep things simple, what I've done here, my assumption page, because I only have 3 pages, or actually 4, that I use to enter my numbers. And once I enter my numbers, all my underwriting and all my projections, including my investors promote uh, and my investors returns, are done. And I'll show you that. I don't have to. So if I underwrote this deal and I'm going, oh, I got a pretty decent deal. I've got 11.5 cash on cash return and a 26% overall average annualized rate of return. So so it's important based on, the split that I'm doing with my investors, how are you calculating and making sure that you've got enough juice in your deal to make this deal work for them? Because if you can't make it work for them, you are not going to get your deal closed. So, on this front page, I just have some basic information on the price, when it was built. It's 100 units. I'm going to hold it for 7 years, and then my equity from my investors, I put in 3% typically for closing cost, 1 loan point. I do an acquisition fee. I'm putting 30% down for this loan, and I always put my first year insurance in here because you have to have that money at closing in order to, matter of fact, you're going to have your policy and everything approved by the lender before they'll even approve to send the money for the closing. And then before they send the money for your closing, the lender is going to ask you for a copy of your bank statement to make sure you have enough money to close. And they're going to want to see that insurance cost on the HUD, on the preliminary HUD that you will eventually sign in order to get your deal closed with the seller. So, I had a guy, he had a nice size apartment. His insurance cost was over 170,000. It was a pretty big property. And he didn't figure his insurance number at closing. Well, guess where that came from? It came out of his acquisition fee. And he lost most of his acquisition fee. But you got to take the money from somewhere. And unfortunately, he did all of his calculations and he sent all of his documents out to the investors. So he couldn't go back and ask him for more money, and here he was at the closing table. It was a huge mistake. So when I saw that, this was probably, 9 years ago, 8, 9 years ago, it kind of stuck with me. So I just put that in my software to remind myself, hey, you better make sure you got this money, in your pocket and you better be ready for closing. So, so now I know in order to close this deal, I need 3.1 million. The other thing that's really important, so I have my equity here, and then I also have my debt here on the same screen. So I can do a new loan, I can do a bridge loan, which is a temporary loan, I can do an assumption loan. And then, like, if you're going to do an assumption loan, depending upon how many years are left on the loan, a lot of times the lender that did the assumption loan will do a supplemental loan for you, but you have to go back to the person doing that did the primary debt, because no lender is going to let anybody put secondary debt on their property. Okay, because as a matter of fact, in your loan documents, it will even say that. It would be a violation of your loan documents, because now you've got a second mortgage from another bank that could mess up the person that loaned you all this money to buy your property. And so it could be really problematic. So make sure you go back and talk, ask the broker that's selling you the property, and they'll get with the seller and say, I need to talk to the mortgage broker that did this loan because I want to see if I qualify for a supplemental loan. And then you just activate that and they'll give you the numbers and you can just put it in here. And what's really cool when you do the assumption loan, and you add a supplemental loan, commercial underwriter, as soon as you save this, they'll make both of these loans coterminous. And it'll, obviously it'll update all your returns and et cetera, et cetera. But it's really pretty straightforward. You just put these numbers in. Um, the other thing that you want to be careful about is your capital improvement dollars. And what I did here, and this is a little bit of a problem. I put some notes up here for myself. And so when I think about there's four things that you have to know and you have to do when you're buying any kind of a property. And the first one that I ask about before, even start underwriting or as I'm doing it, what kind of deferred maintenance is on this property? So what this means is that something that's deferred is something that the seller should have done but didn't do. And the seller might say to you, said, well, I'm selling this property as is. So if you want to buy it, you have to take care of it. So then it comes down to, okay, no problem. What has to be done, and then you get your quotes, but that affects how much you can offer on your purchase price, because now it's going to cost you more money to buy this. Now, some sellers will negotiate this or say, no, I'll take care of that. You don't have to do that, but you need to ask and know, because you don't want surprises when you buy this property. So what kind of deferred maintenance is remaining on this property? It's a lot easier to talk about it and write it up now and not get into the contract and go out and do your due diligence and find out that the property is in really bad shape. And I've had that happen to me. It was an apartment building. It was beautiful. And it was in Mobile, Alabama. And we loved the property. We got out there and it was a new property. It was less than 5 years old. And the property was a total disaster. There were holes in the roof where you could actually see outside the roof. And the owners had the maintenance person put putty in it. The swimming pool was a dark green. I mean, the city had come and shut it down months before, and they tried to tell me, oh, they just shut it down. Well, a pool, I've owned lots of pools in my life, and they just don't turn green. So, it's really important that you ask these questions. Obviously, when we got there, it didn't take us long to decide that we weren't going to do this deal. And so we moved on. The other thing is like reserves. And this is something you're going to want to talk to your mortgage broker about, because typically the lender that you use may want 2 or 3 months of taxes and insurance. And so one of the things that I want to caution you about, and I did a whole thing on assumption loans. I did a learning lab. I call them learning labs. Vinky, these are live trainings and education on underwriting that I do for free for all of my software users. So if you are subscribed to Commercial Underwriter, you get to participate. And if you can't, I record the sessions and I send it out to everybody at the end of the day. But
Mhm.
on this thing with reserves, if you're doing an assumption loan, and this is one of the things that we found out, is that we had a seller they were selling an apartment and they had over $250,000 in lender reserves. And when you assume that loan, you have to replace those reserves. And so we didn't underwrite for an extra $250,000 of reserve. And so, if you're going to do an assumption loan, you need to be really clear and get it in writing. Is the reserve money that the lender's holding on the loan you're going to assume? Because that money really belongs to the seller. And there's a really good possibility that you may have to replace that reserve money. So if you're going to do an assumption loan, we had about a year and a half ago, we had 4 apartment properties in different parts of the country. They were all assumption loans and they all went bad. And there were different reasons why they went bad and what to look for. And I did a learning lab on all of that. So, anybody after this call, we'll talk about commercial underwriter. We got a little special we're gonna do, but if you're interested, I'll give you a copy of that assumption learning lab that I did, because if you're gonna buy apartments or whatever, there's probably 3 slides that it has all the questions and information you need to ask, several of them right from the beginning before you spend any time underwriting them. So reserve money, you're going to have to have some kind of money at closing, and then the renovations are things that you're going to do. Okay, now these are my notes. And what kind of, am I going to do interior improvements? And then the last thing that I see people, this is a mistake, is that if you're going to buy a multi-million-dollar property, you don't want to go into the investment without any money in your pocket. Because for those of you that own a home, or maybe you rent a single family home, you buy and rent or sell single family properties, no, you know that no matter how well you do your inspection, when you buy that house and you get in there, you always find something else. And you're always running down to Lowe's or Home Depot or getting something to get that fixed. Well, just think about what it might be in an apartment. And typically, if something's going to go wrong or you're going to find something that the seller may not even know about, it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So depending on the size of the deal, I'll put in and I'll raise an extra 50 to maybe $200,000 for unexpected capital improvements. So I have a line item here on this little deal. We had $50,000 of miscellaneous unexpected operating costs, because after you get done raising your money and you ask, your investors to participate in your deal, if you close your deal and and all of a sudden you got a problem, the last thing you want to do is go back to your investors in your first year and say, hey, we need everybody to put some money in. That will not go well. So again, you want to be conservative in your underwriting. You don't want to take a lot of risk, but you want to make your decisions based on the data, right? So uh, so anyway, my capital improvements, I can put them in here, and then that number, that 488,000, it automatically gets put here. You don't even have to type it in, and it totals up and tells me that my total raise is 3.1 million. But make sure that, when you're first underwriting your deal and what you're going to need, that you've got these 4 considerations into your underwriting, because you don't want to get caught short later into the investment after you buy the property. The next part, I'm going to show you, and I'll go through a couple more things here, is when you're underwriting a deal, the most important thing when you get started, and it's called stated in place income and stated in place expenses. Now, that means what is stated means what's stated on the seller's financial. Now, I keep whatever's on the seller's financial, I put exactly into my underwriting, whatever it is, because the seller is saying, Bob, this is my income, these are my expenses, and that's my starting point. And the lender, they're going to want to see the last 3 years of the seller's expenses. And because that's the starting point that they're going to value and determine what they're going to loan on your property. So if you don't have accurate starting numbers, which I see, I've seen people take the seller's, repair and maintenance cost and change it. That's different than the P&L. And I go, well, how did you do that? Where did you get that number? No, 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 you can't do that. So again, we may not agree with how they're operating the property, but it could be opportunity for us. We're looking for opportunity, and it's okay if the numbers are really bad. It's okay because if we have an opportunity to improve those numbers, we're going to make more money. But you have to make your offer based on the seller's financial and how the business is operating. You're buying a business here, and it's all based on cash and cash flow. So the question comes down to in the purchase price, how much risk are you willing to take? How much risk? Okay, and I'm going to show you how I mitigate that and what I do in a moment. So this part here on the seller stuff, we can do that through artificial intelligence. Also, I have a lot of flexibility in my underwriting. I can add all kinds of expense. All I got to do is come in here, edit. I've got default categories. And let's just say if I want to add an expense and, I can't think of anything, I'll just put Vinki in here. Everything is real time. So I typed her name in, and then there's Vinki right there. So if there's something on the seller's financial that's not, common and it's a cost, then you can put that here and then put your number over here. You have to have this kind of flexibility. So as soon as I get my numbers in here, the only thing I can save this, and then the last thing that I have to do is that I have to think about if it's an apartment, we're on the apartment side of commercial underwriter. Commercial underwriter is actually two products in one. We have the unit-based side, of course, and the dollar. We're on the unit-based side. So on the unit-based side, when you're calculating your income and you're calculating the value play, which is a little bit different than when you have a retail center or a medical office building, the concept is the same, but the way we handle it is different. So in my income forecast, when I'm looking at a value play, I need to have something that's simple and something that's dynamic and that's something that makes sense to me. And so in this situation, I've got a 100-unit apartment and I'm going to renovate this and increase the rents, but you can't do it all at one time in one year. You have leases and there's all kinds of things that happen during that period of time. So I'm going to do a $200 increase my first full year, and I'm going to renovate 35 units. Now, everybody else that year is going to get a $30 increase in their leases. Now, one thing that I also do, this apartment's running at a 5% vacancy, but over here, one of the things you need to do is that once you start, if you're going to transition a property, you're going to have higher vacancy. Well, why? Well, number one, people may not want to pay your price. Number two, they may not be able to afford your price. And number three, the worst part is that it always takes longer to get things done. Okay, even those of you, if you're in the single family home business and you want to try to get that house rented, that rental house that you just bought, and I want to be up by August 1. How many times you actually meet that date? I always struggled with that because there's always something that we find that I gotta fix, and and it's hard to get the tenant in. But one thing that I know, because I know that coordinating all of the contractors and getting everybody out there, um, because these vendors, they have other accounts. You're not their only customer, and they're always out there. So I know I'm going to have higher vacancy. So during my transition period in this apartment, I created a 10% vacancy instead of 5 every year to offset that potential and predictable loss of revenue. Okay. So my loss of revenue is going to be determined, and the amount of that is going to determine how efficient I am and how much effort I put in coordinating and getting all this work done and getting a new tenant in that's willing to pay $200 more. And then the fourth reason, like some people, if you're going to charge me that much money, I'm going to go to a newer apartment down the street. They have more amenities and it's newer. So for all four of those reasons, you're going to have higher vacancy. So when I see people underwriting their vacancy at 5% because it's an apartment and they're going through this transition, it's a recipe for a disaster. You're not going to have the NOI and the amount of cash that you're projecting because it just doesn't work that way. And it's just a natural set of facts that you need to consider when you're underwriting. And you can make this 12%. I've seen people make it 15%. I think that's excessive, but this is what we do. And then after the transition period, in the 7-year period, I'm doing a 4% increase in income. So what I'd like to see you do, what I'm doing is because the consumer price index and the cost of goods is still just under 3%. I used to underwrite 3% increase in income for my projections and 2% in expenses, but I haven't done that in a year and a half because things have gone up, especially after COVID. So I'm underwriting 4% of the of income increases and 2% expenses. So, again, once to simplify this, once I get my assumptions in here with my debt, which is pretty quick to do, I get my capital improvement dollars. I can just get an idea from the real estate broker. I can put in my starting financials from the seller, and you can use AI or you can just input it yourself. And then I'll do my income forecast, and I'm basically done. That's it. Now, I do have a couple last things that I do. Some of these I just keep. I run a minimum vacancy of 5%, and there's my 3% expense increase. These are all defaults in here, so I don't really do too much here. The only thing I might change is my reversion value. Now, for those of you, you can see I have a reversion value. What it's also referred to as a terminal cap rate, meaning when you come to term, when you come to the end. So if you're going to value your property 10 years from now, in this case, 7 years, you have to project and make an educated guess on what you think your cap rate's going to be 7 years from now. And so anyway, that's how you determine your value. And then I also put in 2% for real estate commission because when you sell your property, you're going to have to pay the broker whatever that value is minus 2%. So all these numbers, all the cost of the sales commission and everything comes out before I calculate my investor's return and my property returns. So I want to make sure, because this could be if you're buying a property for 5 million, you're selling it for 15 million, that's going to be a huge cost. So you don't want to show the investor that they're going to make more money when they're going to, you're going to have to take this out of the cost of doing business when you sell. I also do a rent roll that we can create. I have a sources and uses. So, how are you going to use the money? It's your equity, it's your debt, it's your cost to do the deal. I have loan tables. If I'm doing a supplemental loan and I'm getting it, at month 27, I can just go in and I can just come down here to month 27, and I can look at the balance, 4.9 million here. So I can verify what the cost is going to be. And it's really cool how it works. So that's the basics of commercial underwriter. I will share with you a couple other things that are important. In the starting financials, some tips on what I'm doing today. One of the things that has caused me significant heartburn is the cost of insurance, particularly in the apartment business. I just paid an insurance bill about 2 months ago on an apartment that I own in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's a beautiful apartment. It's only 88 units. I've been in it now. I'm going into my 6th year. And when I underwrote this, even the way that I underwrote, my insurance for this year was underwritten at $22,400. The bill that I paid was just over $62,000, almost $40,000 more, which has now put significant pressure on my NOI. And we're making profits. We're doing pretty good. And I'm paying my investors, but now there's not enough cash flow at this moment to pay myself, the investor, the GPs. So my guidance here, if you're gonna, whatever the seller's insurance number is, until things settle down, and I haven't seen it yet, but today and for the last year and a half, because insurance has been going up 20 to 40%, I recommend that whatever the seller's number is in your underwriting, that you put 20% more over on your side. Now, if you're going to get into a best and final and you kind of want to fine tune that number, because there's a lot that goes into insurance. And during the 7 biggest mistakes, I'm going to go deep into insurance and all the things that you need to have and consider. And you need to ask the seller when you see their insurance number, but so you can adequately put your number in here. That's a big number. Now, as we move down, we've got repair and maintenance, general admin, and my contracted services. Those 3 categories, I've changed how I'm underwriting them on my column because of the tariffs. What, 2 months ago or so, we were going to impose 150% tariffs on China, and they were going to do the same to us. And it seemed like what was going on in the world of tariffs, that everything was going to go up substantially. We still have the threat of tariffs. I know things have already started to go up. Everything has started to go up. So what I'm doing in my own underwriting to offset this in my projections is that I'm taking repair and maintenance, general admin, and my contracted services. And over here, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to put in, depending on what their number is, and if I can improve upon it, 15 to 20% increase on my column. Because tariffs are going to go up. I mean, our prices in my thoughts based on what's happening is going to go up at least 10%. And think about it yourself when you go to the store. Just if you own an apartment, what you're paying for appliances, AC units. Are you comfortable that things are only going to go up 10% in the next 2 years? And you're buying a property that you're going to keep for 5, 7, 10 years. So, you have to think about this and you have to protect yourself. My number one goal in any investment, number one, is to preserve my investors' capital. To preserve my investors' capital. And so if I've got to not do distributions because I've got a problem and need to put money into the deal, that's what I'm going to do because that's going to preserve their capital. Okay, so I don't want to overreact, but I do need to be thoughtful, and I call it common sense underwriting. So so what if your number's a little bit high and your number's higher than the brokers? The brokers are just trying to sell a package. They're just trying to sell a property to you through their property package with their own pro forma. So you need to make some smart decisions. And again, we're making educated guesses here because we don't know. None of us know. I don't know, but I am anticipating in as I'm underwriting my properties and I'm not compromising. The best thing that could happen is that tariffs only go up 10% all the way across the board. Okay. But, today, even on our own mindset, it's almost laughable, the way that things are going. So I'm very concerned and I'm walking on eggshells, if you will, because I don't want to underwrite myself out of a deal. But at the same time, if any of you have ever been in a bad deal or had something go wrong, you can't, it's so hard to turn it back around. Fortunately, I've never been in a bad deal. all of my deals have always overperformed, but because of the way that I underwrite. So um, I hope this has been helpful. We've been going for about an hour, Vinky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's questions. There's a lot more here. I love to educate people on underwriting. I love to helping people buy properties and get their deals done. But I do it all through my software. So if Vinky, if unless there's any questions or anything, or maybe this would be a good time to share with them, the people that are on here, what you're going to do for them.
Yes,
Uh,
of course.
just call, and then we can have some questions.
Yeah, sure. If you, I have a few questions from the audience. So you want to answer those first? So first question is from Rao. He's asking, how do we get comparative analysis data and how to input that in the tool for analysis?
Okay, when you say comparative analysis, what does that mean?
Like the comps, I guess, because you wanted to compare your deal, the data that you're getting, and then how it's doing compared to the market. I think that's what he meant.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Let me show you how I forgot to show you how I make investment decisions quickly, okay?
Okay.
Because I'm not focused on when I'm underwriting initially, if there's a value play, that's when I pay most attention to other people's apartments that I'm competing with, okay? But when I'm initially underwriting the deal, let me show you this because the soft commercial underwriter is a valuation tool. Now, how it compares to other properties, that's a whole different thing. Okay. And I do look at other apartments, but at the end of the day, I'm really mostly interested in the market that I'm in, the area that I'm in. Am I in a predictable, excuse me, path of progress? Are jobs being created, or is the neighborhood and anything in a 3 mile area, is it declining? So, what's important to me about comps, that and the time that I look at it, because I don't have, it's not incorporated in commercial underwriter. That's not what commercial underwriter's sole function is. But um, when a broker in an apartment deal tells me there's a big upside, and then that's when I want to see it. That's when I want to see, okay, what apartments are you using to come up with your numbers? And I'm looking at apartments that are near the same age within a 3 mile area, that, was built around the same time, all that, and so then I'm going to take that information, I'm going to look at it. And then when I go out to the property, I'm going to visit those apartments and see what the condition is. I'm going to go in as a renter and I'm going to pick up that information from the leasing office and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to compare it against my property. I'm just not going to take it for granted. And there's no easy way to do that. And to try to do it on paper, it's hard. I do look at it, but it's not something that you incorporate into commercial underwriter, if that was the question. But let me share with you, this would be the last thing that's important on how I make investment decisions quickly and what you want to do. Okay, so let me share my screen real quick. Okay. All right. Okay, can you see the screen? I guess,
Mhm.
hopefully. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So as soon as I get my numbers in, once you know where to put the numbers, it should take you less than 30 minutes to put in like a 300 unit apartment deal. My intern Alex does that. It's a true story. It's just the ease of use of the software. But as soon as my numbers are in here, what I want to know, because I remember I said, the cash is what's important. It's the cash that makes everything happen. In my Analyze tab here, I go straight, I'm in my cash flow model for the 7 years. I go straight to the bottom. And what I'm looking for is that I'm looking for, I said that I was paying my investors in this deal a 7% preferred rate of return. Now, when I start off, I'm in a partial year. I'm not even open a whole year because I'm not closing this deal till September the 1st. So I have a little bit of money, but there's no money for the manager. So my first full year into the investment, I've only been in it 3 months, I'm going to have a 6.2% cash on cash return, and that's going to be the investor's 7% distribution, but there's no money for the manager. Now, there's never going to be full distributions and money for a manager and your GP side whenever you start an investment. It doesn't work that way because what's happened, you're paying more than just the purchase price of the property. So you have to make that up just to get back to even. For example, if you're buying a $10 million property and you've got closing cost of 2 million, well, your costs are $12 million, not 10 million. You know, your cost to get that deal between closing costs, mortgage loan points, acquisition fee, and capital improvements, you've got to that's all on top of your purchase price. So you've got to be able to make that up. So the manager, never be alarmed by the fact that you're not making any money right off the bat. So remember, this is I call it evolution, not revolution, right? So I noticed that once I get going into my second full year and the remaining years, I'm comfortably paying my investor. So now what about Bob and Vinky? All right. How do we get paid as GPs? So now we notice in the second full year, we're going to make some money. And then the third full year, well, excuse me, we'll make a little bit more. And then we start to catch up. Now we get full distributions the last 3 years. But look at this, as we build our business, we've got 158,000, 117. So we got 300 and what, 20,000 or more. We got another 48,000. So if I look at these numbers, I'm looking at there's plenty of money to pay us and make this up. There's a lot of remaining cash here. What I see happen a lot of times is that if you fall short on your cash and you can't make your distributions when you sell the property, you have to take that cash out and make everybody whole. Okay, so that means that their equity return is going to be less because you had to take that cash out at closing because you didn't generate enough cash. Okay, so this is all that I look at. If I know that the numbers work here like they do, then I can immediately go as soon as my numbers are in and I said, hey, I got a really decent deal here. Vinky and I's got it looks like this apartment, this 100-unit apartment is going to be a really good investment. And then you're going to have somebody say, well, Bob, if I give you $100,000, how much money am I going to make? Think about that right now. Somebody said that to you. Just put your numbers in. Well, as soon as I put my numbers in, I can come right over to my returns and I've already got it generated that if somebody gave me $100,000 and you notice there's nothing yellow here, there is no input. It's all done and formulated automatically. It shows their 7% return on what they're going to make. And then year 7, it shows me giving them back their 100,000. Here's their equity check. And then it calculates their internal rate of return and their overall annualized rate of return and how much money they made. So they gave me 100,000, they got back 212,000 in this investment. And you can print this, you can PDF it, you can drop it in your property package. It's all automated, but it's all done. And then the other thing that is really important for you, because the reason you're doing this is that you want to make money. You want to make it for yourself and your family and maybe the charity and the things that are important to you. For some reason you want to make a change. So, but how much money do you make? And in this particular case, when we underwrote this deal, we underwrote it at a 60-40 split, meaning 40% of the equities go into the manager and 60% to the investor. Now, when you have a really good deal, don't give all your equity and all your money away because this is where you're going to make your big bucks. So I already know I already have enough cash and I have enough return to get the investors in. So that's why I did this deal at 40%. A lot of my deals earlier on, even I think I only had one deal I did a 65-35 split. All of my deals have been 60-40 splits. I've even done 50-50 splits because there was so much cash flow when we did the deal. So I come down, so what about us? So when I come down to my manager returns, I can come down here and I input my acquisition fee and then the percent we're going to get. And then it shows me right here, when I put that in, that this little $7 million deal is worth 2.5 million to Vinki and I. So if we want to get a sponsor or we need somebody to help us with a loan, we can say, okay, well, how much do we want to give up? Maybe we give up a little bit of acquisition fee. How much equity do we want to give up? This is what we're working with. And it shows what our portion of it is. And also, the most important thing, it also automatically calculates your promote. Now, this may be a new term to you, but if you get a sophisticated investor, and this is why I have this happened several years ago to one of my really good investors they were buying an apartment deal in Atlanta, and the investor that they were attracting that liked the deal, they went to this person and they said, so and so, he goes, you don't have any money in this deal. What's your promote? And the investor says, oh, well, it's a 70-30 split. You're getting 70% of the equity and the general partner's getting 30%. And the investor said, no, 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 no. That is not what I'm asking you. You don't have any money in this deal. Okay. And if you do at closing, you're taking it out. I want to know what your promote is. Now, a promote is your equity on your side. And what you have to do whenever you buy a new property, you have to create, if you're going to pay your investors 7%, and this was a $3.1 million raise, I think it was, whatever it was, you have to calculate for your 40%. What are you going to calculate the 7% on? So you notice that the 2,067,000 that is here, if I were to go back and instead of a 60-40 split, I want to make it better for the investors and I want to change it to say to a 70-30 split. All I have to do is just put 30% in here for the manager, okay? And it'll calculate. I go back to my returns, and on the manager returns, look what it did. Now our promote is 1.3 million, not over $2 million. So our 7% is calculated off of 1.3. So if anybody ever asks any of my users and they say, hey, what's your promote? There it is right there. They just have to look it up. And it changes every time you change your equity percentage. And it's also there's a little bit complicated formula. It took about a month and a half because I had my wife, who is a forensic accountant that does all this for us, work with our developer, and we put it into the software because I thought it was important, not just to know the promote, but also I want to know what's in it for me as a GP, what's in it for you as the manager, what are we doing? And so if we perform the way that we underwrote, we can see how much money are we going to make. So, commercial underwriter is a very powerful program. It's easy to use, and there's a lot of really cool features in here to help you make better decisions faster. And that's how I designed it, and that's how I use it. So I hope that was helpful.
I think it was really helpful, Bob, and it's very, very informative and very easy to use the way I look at it. And we have a few more questions, but I wanted to share over here. If you like whatever you see, this is not it. I'm going to put the link in the chat as well, because you can get this tool for yourself, and it's just like not much. You can go to gobeyondmultifamily.com and commercial underwriter, commercial dash underwriter, or you can just go to gobeyondmultifamily.com. And then we have Bob over here, Bob Bowman's commercial underwriter. You can click on that and it will take you here. So when you click on learn more, it's going to take you to Bob's site where you can go ahead and sign up for his program. And then he can always give you the complete demo. And you can sign up here. And then Bob is really nice. He's offering us a discount on his program. He's giving $500 off to everyone who joined us today. And then you can use the coupon code over here. That's, I think, Summit 2025. That's the code. And I think we have this code on our website too when you go there and check that out. Let me put this in the chat as well. Let me see here. I'm sorry, I'm doing multiple things. So you can go ahead and access the course from there. And like Bob said, he walks you through completely, and also he's gonna hold your hand and make your life easy to understand the numbers, because like Bob mentioned multiple times, there's many common mistakes, and also the numbers tells you the story. And it's not always all black and white. There's a lot of gray area. So in order to do the best deals, you gotta understand the number fully, and you have to be comfortable yourself 100% before you bring the deal to your investors, because we do have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors. So I just wanted to highlight that. So once again, the link is in the chat, and Bob is offering Summit 2025 as a coupon code, $500 off. Until when, Bob, you said you can offer that until
Yeah,
Monday?
we'll do it through Wednesday of next week because I'm going. If people want a demo, I'll do it to the end of business day Eastern time, 5 o'clock on Wednesday. So if people want to do a demo, let me share with you the pricing real quick because it's $500 off what. So in the very first year, the price if you go out on the commercial underwriter is basically $3,000, 29.95. I told them somebody a couple years ago it was 29.95. They thought it was $30. They go, "Oh, okay, I want to get it." I go, "Whoa, wait a minute." So it's 29.95, but for those of you on the call here with Vinky, you get a $500 off if you purchase or subscribe by the end of business day on Wednesday. After the first year, it's only the one time that you have that charge, but after the first year, because it's cloud-based, you have an option. You have three options. You can cancel, or you can continue at $99 a month and cancel anytime, or you can get a 25% discount. And instead of paying $1,200 for the year, say 99 a month, you can pay $895 for a full year. Now, the other thing is that if you subscribe, I do 2 learning labs a month. And depending upon what I'm doing, sometimes I'll do an extra or I'll maybe just do one. It just depends because I don't do presentations and underwriting. They typically last 35, 40 minutes unless I have content and real things to say. I just don't do these just to talk, okay? I do this because I want to help you and I have something that I want to share with you that you need to know that's changed in how we're doing our underwriting. So I have free training, okay? One-on-one training. So typically there's a session. It can last an hour, hour and a half, depending on your time frame. You set it up at your convenience with my trainer. He'll also train you. There's a whole training session that he'll do with you on AI and how to incorporate the seller's financials, which is really cool. And then a lot of times, the easy part is learning where to put the numbers and how to use the software. But a lot of times, as you get into your deal, you might not need some more training. So I also offer that at no cost to you. Okay. So the onboarding and learning the product uh, is is really easy. It's very thorough. And John Lopez, our trainer, is just amazing. You know, I want you to succeed. And I want you to be good at underwriting. Until you get good at this, the better you can be. Let me just put it this way. The sooner and better you're going to be identifying more and more investment opportunities and building your own business. The other thing is that I make improvements to the software. I do updates and changes, and I come up with new versions throughout the year. There's no cost to you, and actually, because it's cloud-based, over the weekend, my developer actually pushes it all out. And then, depending on the extent of the updates and what we've done, I may even do a training on it. But I always show everybody about what it is. The other thing is that there's unlimited cloud storage, unlimited technical support. Um, and let's see, the upgrades. Oh, and then the live learning labs that I've already mentioned. So, that's right. I've got one more thing. Some of the learning labs that I've done that I've recorded over the last year or so, especially this one on assumptions that I was sharing with you earlier. I'll give you access to all of those videos and all that education that you can go in and just sit behind your computer at night or the weekend at your leisure and go over them over and over again. So anyway, that's all part of the program, and that's how it works. If you want a demo, I don't know what's the best way to do that. Do you want them just to reach out to me directly in my email if they want a demo of the product, and I can schedule something up with them, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. They can reach out to you or me, whatever is convenient for anybody, because I think this is such an awesome product. And then it's just the cost is just the peanuts, but it's just like, brushing up your skill set, getting your brain trained, how to look at the numbers. When you look at the numbers, you know the story. So this is the kind of training that we are getting from Bob, and I won't trade for anything. So once again, the link is in the chat and also the coupon code as well. So, Bob, I do have a few more questions for you. I know we are going to 90 minutes. That's what we planned for. So, which is like pretty
Oh,
awesome.
okay.
A lot of people, everybody's almost still here. They love it, whatever you're sharing. So, this question comes from my good friend, BD. Hi, BD. Good to see you here. He's asking, what is your business model? Is it SaaS? And who owns the data? Does our data get shared? And who owns underwriting when it's completed?
Okay. So it is a SaaS product and it's extremely secure, okay, through Microsoft Azure. We have no idea what you've underwritten. We have no access to it. As a matter of fact, when you sign up, is that you get a computer generated passcode and it goes to your email. I cannot send it or resend it to you if you can't find it, because it's that secure. And we did that on purpose. Now, I own the code. I own the code. I am the only owner of the code. Um, I, and so I developed it, my company. I did this for myself, so I have no debt on the company, and I have 100% control over everything that's going on there. So I do have a developer, architect out of Tampa that's been with me from the beginning. And then I also have a full-time programmer overseas. He's awesome. He's been with me for about 3 years. So those are the only two people that have access to the code. But
Just the code only, but they do not have access to the deal that's underwritten, right?
no, 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 no,
No,
never.
not the data. So
No.
who owns the data? Like, let's say if I underwrite
No,
the
you own the data, and
on the
then,
data.
when people stop subscribing, after a period of time, I don't know if it's a year or something, then that data gets deleted because I pay for all the data, and the more data that just sits
Loaded.
out there, you know, the more it costs, right? And I'm trying to keep my costs down so that I don't have to increase any prices. I've had only one price increase in the last 8 years, 7 years. And that's
Okay.
because of the cost from the vendors, So I'm trying to do everything I can. And so that data belongs to the user. And we have no idea. We can't get in, we can't see anything. So one of the things that's a misconception, like if you want to share, so is it BB or VB? If you want to,
Meeting.
yeah, if you're using commercial underwriter and you want to share it with me, it doesn't go through email. There's no attachments. I got a little share function and it drops your underwriting, your deal right into my email, not my email, my part of commercial underwriter. It never gets outside of commercial underwriter. Okay. So you can take the data. I have a whole bunch of really cool reports that I use in my property package, but you can take that data and you can turn it, like if you want to do your cash flow and turn it into an Excel file or a PDF or some kind of a web archive file. You have a lot of ways you can capture your data if you want to keep it, and if you decided not to continue with the software. But there's a period of time, because some people, what we didn't want to do, they have an issue with their credit card, or they have a situation and they come back a couple months later or 3 months later, and I didn't want their data to be gone and all their properties. So you can go in there and you can delete every single one right out of the system if you want. I have it in there because I delete properties all the time. So you have control, we have no access.
To the deal. But how about that? Can we download once we underwrite a deal, can we can we download the complete deal, the complete underwriting in Excel format or anything like that? Or does it stay on the platform only?
No, you can, all of your results, your numbers and the reporting, I'd have to show you the reporting that's comprehensive, has all the data, and it's about 7 pages plus, like you have your manager returns, you have your 100K investor returns, you have all the like all your assumptions and how you did the debt. You can download all of that into a PDF or Excel or whatever.
Okay, so there's a question from DJ. Hi, DJ. Good to see you here. So I think it was during your presentation when you were talking about the expenses. He was asking where you have expenses increase for year 2 or 3, for example, utilities.
So there's two things that he's asking. First of all, yes, in the income forecast, remember when I was talking about the value play, you can increase the income by a specific dollar amount every year, and or you can do a percentage. I showed that 4% after we went through transition, so that's a 4% increase on the rents. Utilities, let me provide you my thought on utilities. I never increase utilities, never. Okay, because in the 5 years or 7 years I'm going to hold it, utilities and your cost of utilities is based on consumption. So if you have a lot of tenants or a few tenants or whatever your occupancy is, if your occupancy goes down or there's less people living in that apartment unit, maybe instead of 3 people, a husband and wife and a child in that 2 bedroom, maybe there's only 2 people, right? And or one person, you have a single person. So your consumption is going to go up and down, and that's going to have a direct reflection on your cost for your utilities for that month. Now, when these counties or cities make changes, excuse me, in their pricing, okay, it takes months to increase. And usually, excuse me, it goes out to the public and they say, okay, we're going to have a 20% increase in your water bill. And that's the number they put out there, even though, their goal is to get a 5% increase. And so there's a bunch of meetings with the county and the commissioners and the water company or the electrical company. Now, electricity tenants pay for, but on the water and that's the utility that, the water and sewage is the problem. So those prices do not go up on a regular basis because of the amount of time it's public, right? The amount of time it takes just to make the decision. So maybe one time in the entire time that you own that property, you may see some kind of a water and sewage increase. Now, if you're doing a RUBS program, if it goes up, you're just going to bill it back, right? So that's why, from a generic point of view, I always, I always do the 4% increase and then the 3% overall expenses. And that would also include utilities. It's a very small amount. Okay. But I really don't do anything like, like what's going on with insurance now is just terrible. And then there's nothing we can do about the fact that we're paying more money for that apartment or that office building than the seller, right? Because we're buying it for more, so our taxes are going to go up more. So we know that, we can anticipate that, but for utilities is an entire different type of expense. And so that's what I do. And if you're going to do utilities and get income, just be mindful that every state has its own formula and what you're allowed to do with your tenants. For example, when I was in Texas, where I did my first deal in 2008, they had 5 different methodologies. So on how to bill back your tenants. And so you had to declare and you had to contact, in Texas, as you know, the capital is in Austin. So you have to contact the real estate commission. They have a form. You declare what it is you're going to do, sign off on that form, because if they send somebody out to inspect your records, you have to be able to show that you're billing back your tenants according to the state real estate law. So, whatever state you're in and you're going to do this, make sure that you understand, what it is. Just don't underwrite and say, oh, well, there's no rubs. I'm just going to bill them all back $20. So you definitely want to try to figure out what you can do. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I like that answer. So let's move on to the next question is from Joseph Noel. He's asking how the software generate the offer.
Okay. So, Joseph, commercial underwriter is a valuation tool. What you're going to do to generate the offer is that I would assume you're talking about an offer to the seller, not an offering for your investors. If you're talking about an offering for your investors, I do that right in commercial underwriter, and I just take those reports and the things that those results and I just put them in a PDF and download it right into my property package if you're talking about that kind of offering. But if you're talking about making an offer, you're going to want to have a separate letter of intent. And Joseph, I have one that I use that I streamline. I can get a letter of intent out in about 1 minute or 2 minutes at the most. Because I streamline that process. I have it in a Word document. This is just what I do and why. So, Joseph, I know you. If you want to call me, I'll be happy to go through that and share that with you.
Thank you so much. And the next question is from Han Nguyen. He's asking, or she's asking, what is the high level of manager promotes calculation? Is that 30 to 40% equity split after asset disposition after holding period 7 years? How much equity cash the GP put in the sample deal?
Well, in the sample deal, boy, in most of all these deals, the GP didn't put any money in. They would be, if they put money in, they'd be a passive investor. They would be on the 70% side. I didn't quite understand the whole question, Vinky. Maybe you could just run that by me one more time.
Sure. The question is, what is the high level of manager promotes calculation? That's
High
part one
level of manager promote calculation.
calculation. Mhm.
So yeah, let me just give you the concept behind it, okay? Because I don't know what the formula is. That's out of my wheelhouse. But if you're going to raise $1 million and you're doing a 70-30 split, that $1 million, which is money you're going to get from your investors, that's your raise, right? That $1 million represents 70%. So what would 30% be? If that is 70%, what would 30% be? And so that's what commercial underwriter calculates out automatically.
And my second part of the question is that 30-40% equity split after asset disposition after a holding period of 7 years? And how much equity / cash the GP put in the sample deal? I'm gonna save this question. We can reply via email too, I think.
Yeah, well, so when you sell the deal, you have to make sure that, it takes about a month and a half. You need to pay all your bills, all the vendors that still need to be paid. And then what we do, as soon as right after we sell the property, we write two checks. The first one we write is that we do a separate check to the investor to show their return on investment. So if they gave us 100,000, we write them a check back for 100,000 and say thank you for participating in our investment. After they get their return, whatever money is left is what we split 70-30. Now, again, you don't want to distribute all of the money yet because you're going to have bills coming in for a couple of months and you don't want to close down your accounts and you don't want to disperse all the money to yourself because once you disperse it, then you're going to be in a pickle if you start getting bills. And believe me, bills will come. You have no idea. Sometimes it takes 3 months, but we always leave a little bit of money and we don't close down the entity or the operating account for several months afterwards. But most of the money has been distributed on a 70-30 or 60-40, whatever it is, basis after we've paid the investor their returns, their initial investment.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is from DJ. He wants to know, is there a trial period for the software?
There's no trial period, but I do have a 14-day full refund back. If the software, for whatever reason, after 14 days or in 14 days or less, if you want a refund, I'll give a full refund back. I've never had that happen before. Never had in all the years where someone said, Bob, your software doesn't do what you said it was going to do, or it doesn't work, or whatever it is. So, I'd like to work with serious people that want to buy real estate because I have a lot of cost and time up front to get them trained, to teach them the product. And but that's my policy, and it's in writing and it's on my website as well. But if you have 14 days, is say, Bob, it's not working out. I'd like to have my money back, then that's what I do. I'll just put it right back on your card.
Great, thanks. So next question is the software applicable for mobile home park acquisitions?
Oh yeah, it's great for mobile home parks. Yeah,
It
see,
does.
yeah, it's very good. Yeah, very good. And whoever that was, if you're interested in mobile home parks and need some help, we did a lot with my wife did a lot on the mobile home park site. Matter of fact, she wrote the mobile home park class for Robert Kiyosaki for Rich Dad, and she delivered their product for 10 years and worked with Robert and his wife Kim. She also did apartments, commercial real estate. She did a lot with them. And Kim, his wife, she likes apartments. And since we were buying apartments, my wife and Kim became pretty close. And so we have a lot of experience in that. There's a lot you need to know about mobile home parks, and commercial underwriter fits mobile home parks like hand in glove.
Great, thanks. And the next question is, in the future webinars, show how to underwrite hotels, RV parks, public storage, office, retail strips, senior housing, student housing, etc. Rao, thank you so much asking for that. That's the reason we want you to come join our clan, our underwriting, commercial underwriting tool right there, because Bob is there to walk us through. He has the live classes where he's going to be teaching you how to underwrite basically any asset class with this underwriting model. But thank you for that question. We appreciate that.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
the next question is, how is the software related to Michael Blank's underwriting model for $150? Because that's just an Excel spreadsheet, DJ. This is a full-blown SaaS product and a lot of automation there. You don't even have to type in the numbers. There's AI tools that you can use to grab your PDFs or the Word docs or the Excel, and then you can just upload and it's gonna populate all the data for you. So I'm gonna let Bob speak to it more.
Yeah, I actually have Michael Blank's software. I bought it a few years ago because I was just interested. I have other people's software because I get ideas. I like to think, but that software is designed specifically only for apartments. And again, it's Excel, and I see people taking that and modifying that. And again, it's just the nature of the beast. That's why I don't use Excel. But my product is different. It's very, very different because of what I do and all the different properties we do and how to analyze it. If this isn't too much over the person's head that was asking the questions, when you get into medical office buildings, which I love, and I love certain office buildings, um, we factor in renewal probabilities and months vacant and TILC, and all of the things that are required, and it's really easy to use. Remember, my 8-year-old granddaughter did the commercial side, not the
Oh,
unit-based side. So it's really cool how it works and how easy it is. And as an investor, I'm interested in opportunities and buying. I'm not an education company because, what I've learned, and this is just something that happened because I never sold the software until more recently because it was just for me. Because I'd like to do deals, but I've learned that the more I can help you and educate you and help you with your deals. That's how I've gotten my last several deals from my users. They'll bring me a deal and say, Bob, would you look at this with me and look at my underwriting? I said, yeah, it looks like you got a nice deal here. And then sometimes that leads into, hey, would you be interested in sponsoring this for me? Or would you be interested in whatever? And you helping me raise money. And so that's how I've done my last several deals from my users, something that I didn't expect. So, I feel that your success will be my success, and I'd like to share that with you.
oh, I like that. Thank you so much, Bob, for saying that. Your success is my success. Is if everybody thinks like that, the world will be such a better place. I'm telling you that. And I believe in that, having that abundance mindset or, this collective intelligence and collaborating with others, that brings you a lot more versus trying to run on your own, like one man show. You can go only so far. So it's always good idea to collaborate with others and use this collective intelligence to get to the goals that you're looking to get to. Okay. So if there's no more questions, I think we're going to call it a day. We are just like, it's 11:41. So you spoke 100 minutes, Bob, or more than that. Look at the traction. Everybody's still here. So guys,
No,
I already have the link in the chat for the commercial underwriter, and the discount code is good until Wednesday night, midnight. And please come join the clan, learn together. Let's learn together and make better deals. So thank you again, Bob. We really appreciate you, all the insight, your intelligence. Thank you so much being here. Everybody, until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep building your wealth. And I'll see you next time with another awesome guest. Bye for now.
thank you guys. Have a great week. Let's do a deal.
Yes,
Thank you,
definitely.
Vinky.
Thank you. Thank
You have a
you.
great audience.
Thank you.